12. A sympathetic ear. Among all of the Japanese authorities, the most familiar name to us was that of the former Deputy General of Korea, General Kaznari Ugaki. Since he knew and respected our people and had ruled with a tolerant hand, we felt it would be well for us to meet and talk with this admirable statesman. We found his number in the phone book, learned that he was at his villa in a suburb west of Tokyo, and went out to see him. It was mid-afternoon when I presented my card to his secretary. He stared at it in surprise or fear and bowed so politely that I was uncomfortable. In Japan, as is true in the rest of the world, it is impossible to meet famous, influential people without going through complicated procedures. But God was with us. The general's personal secretary must have supposed that I was a member of the royal family, for he accorded us the honor due a person in that exalted position. He invited us to wait until General Ugaki returned from his walk in an hour. We could have waited inside, but I told Elder Park I wanted to be alone so I could pray. My heart was heavy, and I wanted to tell my Lord about it. I went out onto the Musashino Plain, a vast flat area covered with overgrown reeds that rustled in the strong wind. Walking along a narrow, twisting path, I felt as though I were in a forest. I could see nothing except the path ahead. I don't know why, but I climbed a big pine tree that thrusts its shaggy head high above the undulating sea of reeds. I wanted only to find a quiet place where I could pray. Coming abreast of the tree, I turned impulsively and began to climb, using the branches as though they were rungs on a ladder. I hadn't realized the protection the reeds afforded until I climbed above them and was buffeted by the savage wind. My fingers tightened convulsively on one limb after another until I reached a heavy crotch that gave me some protection against the icy gale. The pine tree was crying mournfully, echoing my heart's desolation. I knew I could not be heard above the soughing wind, so I cried out my agony in my shrill soprano voice, sharing with Jesus all the hurt and frustration and fear that encompassed my heart. I had never been afraid to die. Even now that we were about to embark on the course I was sure would lead to my death, I was not afraid. But I was terrified of the torture and cruelty that would surely be my lot as soon as I was imprisoned. Never before had I experienced such desperation. I didn't even notice a young man approaching until he called to me from the tree's base, signaling with his hand for me to come down. I tried to descend, but I could not. I had clung so tightly and for so long to the branch that I could not release my fingers. The young man, who must have been concerned about me, again motioned for me to come down. By this time I was so cold and so much time had passed that I too wanted to get on the ground again. I had never been so exasperated or felt so helpless. But try as I would, I could not so much as move one finger. Still clinging to the tree limb, I slid free of the crotch until I was hanging by my hands. Gradually the weight of my body overcame my locked fingers, and I slipped free, falling to the ground. I couldn't help wondering what the general would have thought had he come upon me when I was in the tree, or hanging from the branch. When the time came for Elder Park and me to see General Ugaki, we were led to a room to wait for him. A moment later he entered quietly, a gentle, kindly man who looked more like a friend of my father's than I expected a great leader to appear. He confirmed my suspicion that his secretary had thought I was from the royal family. His voice made me remember his visit to a school in Korea where I was teaching. "You're the youngest teacher," he had said to me. "Don't work too hard." I had liked him then, and now I felt as though he were truly a friend. I informed him that I was not related to the royal family, nor was I a noble. I was educated in Japan and am only one of the Christians making an effort to live in faith. He listened carefully as I continued. I have received a special task from God. This elderly man here with me has the same task, but I must do the speaking, since he does not know the Japanese language. Yet God called him to help me, so I would not fear nor fail to accomplish the task. The words stopped in my throat. I had difficulty in telling him the purpose of our visit. God has sent me to warn Japan. I saw the warmth and understanding in his features. He was even more friendly than before when he assured me that I need not be afraid. "There is nothing wrong for you to tell me whatever you want," he said. "So tell me anything you have in mind." He was old and spoke slowly. "At present I have no power. I don't even have a name that will command a hearing with the people. But the authorities of the present government are my friends. They will listen to me. I think I will be able to help you." That encouraged us, and I contrasted the difference between Korea during his regime and the situation under the new Governor General. "When you were ruling, everyone could worship God freely as Christians," I told him. "But now, believers are hated and persecuted more than murderers. Those who have been able to escape from the police wander in the mountains and caves, while their families are scattered like beggars, roaming from town to town." I went on to tell him that true believers could never worship the shrine, for that is a violation of God's commandments. I told him the devout whose faith was strong were being brutally persecuted, while the weak were enticed to become spies and play the part of Judas, betraying their more courageous brothers. "God has clearly told me," I concluded, "that Japan will be punished and be burned and destroyed by sulfur rain, unless she repents and turns from this course of destruction." When I finished, the general nodded as if in agreement. "I was one of the candidates for Prime Minister," he said, "and if I had been elected, I would have done my very best for our nation. But the military is so strong that my friends who are supporting me were reluctant to continue to back me. For that reason, I have no direct authority. However, that does not mean that I am without friends and influence. I will have to be careful in what I say, but most of my friends in the government are grieving for Japan's future. At this moment, the situation is most dangerous." Sensing his agony for Japan, I was bold enough to dare to ask him what he thought of the Bible. "I studied in Germany," he answered without hesitation. "My landlady was a devout believer who read the Bible at the breakfast table and always prayed before every meal. I had deep respect for her, and consequently a deep interest in the Bible." I presented him with an inexpensive Bible I had bought that morning. He thanked me and opened it thoughtfully. "I shall read it every day," he promised. As we left, bending against the strong north wind that tore at my hair, a splendid orchestra was performing magnificently and solemnly in my heart. "I shall die," I thought. "I shall die to obey his will."